The most dangerous warriors in history are not who you think. Today we're ranking the 10 most underrated warriors in history, and you've probably never heard their names. The Sacred Band of Thebes. 300 men, paired as lovers who swore a sacred oath, never to abandon each other in battle. At Leuctra, their commander Epaminondas stacked them 50 ranks deep on the left flank. Standard depth was 8 to 12. He aimed them directly at the Spartan king. The result? 400 elite Spartiates were killed and King Cleon Brutus was dead. In a single afternoon, 3 decades of Spartan supremacy ended. They stayed undefeated for 40 years. At Chaeronea, when the rest of Greece broke and ran from Philip of Macedon's army, the sacred band held their ground. All 300 died, and the 18-year-old who led the cavalry charge that killed them, Alexander the Great, on his first battle. So why don't you know about them? One reason has a name: Xenophon. The most important Greek historian of the era was an Athenian who admired Sparta. He wrote about Leuctra and didn't mention the sacred band once. And then Alexander razed Thebes to the ground in 335 BC. The city that could have told their story was literally erased. Were they elite because of their bond as lovers, or because of Epaminondas' tactical genius? Drop your take in the comments. The Trần Dynasty of Vietnam. The Mongol Empire conquered China, Persia, Russia, and half of Europe. But 3 times they marched into a Southeast Asian kingdom smaller than Montana, and 3 times they limped home in ruins. First invasion, 1258. The Vietnamese burned their own capital and starved the Mongols out. Second invasion, 1285. General Tran Hung Jiao killed the Yuan general, captured 50,000 troops, and the Mongol Prince Togun hid inside a bronze box to escape assassination. Kublai Khan was so furious, he banished his own grandson for life. Third invasion, 1288. 100,000 Yuan troops, 500 warships. Tran Hung Jiao planted iron-tipped wooden stakes in the riverbed, lured the Mongol fleet upriver at high tide, then attacked as the tide dropped. Western history loves the Mongol conquests, but Mongol defeats, those get a footnote. Tran Hung Jiao is literally worshipped as a god in Vietnamese temples today. The Dahomey Amazons. In the heart of West Africa, the Kingdom of Dahomey fielded the only documented all-female standing army in modern history. 5 specialised divisions: huntresses, riflewomen, reapers armed with razor-sharp curved blades, archers with poisoned arrows, and artillery gunners. When they appeared in public, a servant walked ahead ringing a bell. Every man had to avert his eyes on the penalty of death. At the Battle of Adagon in 1892 against the French, 434 Amazons went in. 17 came back alive. French soldiers didn't realise they were fighting women until hand-to-hand combat, and the last known survivor, a woman named Naui, died in 1979 at over 100 years old. Yes, the movie The Woman King is based on them, but the real story is more complicated and more impressive than any Hollywood version. And yes, the Dora Milaje from Black Panther were directly inspired by the Agoge. The Spanish Tercios. For 150 years, the Spanish Tercios were the most feared infantry on earth, the first professional standing army in modern Europe, and almost nobody outside Spain remembers they existed. At Pavia, in 1525, they captured the King of France himself. Kill ratio, 8 to 1. At Bacocca, they killed 3,000 Swiss pikemen in 30 minutes, ending Swiss dominance forever. At Cerignola, they won what historians call the first battle in history, decided primarily by gunpowder small arms. And their last stand at Rocroi in 1643, surrounded and bombarded from all sides. They refused to surrender and repulsed 2 French cavalry charges while completely encircled. When asked about their numbers, one survivor replied, "Count the dead." But why are tercios so underrated? Centuries of anti-Spanish propaganda from English, Dutch and Protestant sources buried Spain's military reputation under stories of colonial brutality. Britain and France won the narrative. I should probably do a full tercios video if this one does well enough. Ethiopian warriors at Adwa. While Europe was carving up Africa in the scramble, one empire said no. And when 100,000 Ethiopian warriors annihilated an Italian army at Adwa, they ensured Ethiopia would become the only African nation to never be colonised. But it started with a deception. Italy wrote a treaty with different terms in Italian and Amharic. In Italian it said Ethiopia was an Italian protectorate. In Amharic it said no such thing. When Empress Taitu Betul discovered the trick, she tore the treaty apart. The Italians expected primitive spearmen. Instead, Menelik fielded 82,000 troops with modern French and Russian rifles and 5 million rounds. The Italian commander split his force into 4 columns using bad maps. They got lost in the dark and were destroyed one by one. 7,000 Italians killed. Empress Taitu personally commanded 5,000 infantry and 600 cavalry. This story directly contradicts the narrative of European military superiority that was central to the colonial era. Mussolini invaded again in 1935, explicitly calling it revenge. He told the Italian people, Adwa has been avenged. That tells you how much it stung. The Mamluks, purchased as children, enslaved, trained for war in the citadel of Cairo for 10 to 15 years. And then they stopped the most unstoppable army in human history. 1260, the Battle of Ain Jalut. The Mongol Empire had just sacked Baghdad and destroyed the Abbasid Caliphate. General Baybars lured the Mongol vanguard into a 3-sided ambush, using the Mongols' own signature tactic, the feigned retreat. Commander Kitbuka was captured and beheaded. This was the first permanent defeat the Mongol Empire ever suffered. Many historians argue it saved Islamic civilization. Then they went after the Crusaders, Caesarea, Antioch, Crac des Chevaliers, Tripoli. One by one, every Crusader fortress fell. The capture of Acre in 1291 marked the end of 2 centuries of Crusader presence in the Holy Land. Western medieval history is told from the Crusader perspective. The Mamluks are always the opponent, never the protagonist. Placing the Mamluks at number 5 is going to make some of you furious, but I think the top 4 earned their spots. The Mapuche Warriors. Spain conquered the Aztec Empire in 2 years, the Inca Empire in 40. But what about the Mapuche of southern Chile? They have endured for 347 years. In 1553, a former Spanish captive named Lautaro organised 6,000 warriors, using a relay wave attack system, 3 waves of fresh fighters. They killed the Spanish governor on Christmas Day. But the story you'll remember is Galvarino, captured in 1557. The Spanish cut off both his hands as punishment. He calmly offered each hand to the axe, without flinching, and then, less than a month later, he came back with knives strapped to his wrist stumps. He killed the Spanish second-in-command before they recaptured him. This isn't legend, it's recorded by a Spanish eyewitness, the poet Alonso de Ercilla, who was standing right there. In 1641, King Philip IV signed a treaty recognising Mapuche sovereignty. This was the only time Spain ever formally recognised indigenous independence anywhere in the Americas. The Moro Juramentados. You see this gun? The Colt M1911, one of the most iconic firearms in American history. 75 years as the standard US military sidearm. It exists because of warriors most Americans have never heard of. In the early 1900s, American troops in the Philippines were fighting the Moro people of Mindanao, and they had a problem: Moro Juramentados. They could absorb an entire cylinder of .38 caliber rounds to the chest and keep fighting. US Army field reports documented Juramentados being shot 4 times through the chest, perforating both lungs and continuing to advance until stopped by a rifle butt to the head. General Leonard Wood reported instances of natives shot through several times and still coming. This information triggered the Thompson-Lagarde pistol tests at the Chicago stockyards. Then John Browning developed the .45 ACP cartridge, and the M1911 was adopted. The entire concept of stopping power in firearms terminology exists because of the Moro. The 21 Sikhs at Saragarhi. Forget the 300 Spartans. On September 12, 1897, 21 Sikh soldiers held a tiny signalling post against 10 to 24,000 Afghan tribesmen for 7 hours. And every single one of them received the highest gallantry award. That has never happened before or since. Havildar Ishar Singh organised the defence. Signalman Gurmukh Singh relayed minute-by-minute battle updates via heliograph to Fort Lockhart, 3 miles away. When told no reinforcements could break through, the response came back. Understood, Gurmukh Singh was the last man alive. He asked permission to leave the signalling tower and fight. He killed between 20 and 40 attackers. His last words transmitted by heliograph were the Sikh battle cry. All 21 were posthumously awarded the Indian Order of Merit. Every participant in a single engagement has received the highest gallantry award available to them for the first and only time. The battle was fought by Indian soldiers for the British Crown. Western military history is dominated by European narratives, and the forgotten wars of the Northwest frontier receive almost no popular attention. I don't care what your criteria are, this is one of the greatest last stands in human history, and it's barely a footnote in most history books. The Haitian Revolutionary Army. In 1802, Napoleon Bonaparte sent 20,000 of Europe's finest soldiers to a Caribbean island, veterans of Italy and Egypt, arguably the best troops in the world. Their mission: re-enslave 500,000 people. Saint-Domingue was the single richest colony on Earth. 60% of the world's coffee, 40% of sugar, imported by France and Britain. 1 million of France's people depended on it directly. They defeated 3 European empires: Spain, Britain, and France. Napoleon sent 60,000 troops in total. At the Battle of Vertières, François Capua had his horse shot from under him. His hat shot off, drew his sword, and charged on foot. The French commander ordered a temporary ceasefire to honour his bravery before the fighting resumed. Total French losses: 50 to 55,000 dead. Napoleon's failure here directly caused the Louisiana Purchase. On January 1st, 1804, Dessalines declared independence and named it Haiti. History remembers the winners, but sometimes it forgets the warriors. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.